Welcome to the Insightful Professor. Today we're going to show you how to download and install Oracle Database 18c Express Edition. This is a newer version of the Express Edition that's available based upon the Oracle 12c family. Previously you could download a version of the Express Edition for Oracle 11g, but the architecture has changed since 11g into the 12c family. So 18c gives you an opportunity to upgrade to more recent or current technology that's being employed by Oracle Corporation. So it's well worth taking a look at how to get the software and get it up and running. The first thing you'll need to do is to go to the Oracle website. What I generally do is I type in otn.oracle.com. It's an older URL, but it still works. It translates to the URL that you see here, oracle.com/technical resources. From this site, you can obtain the software. Click on the software downloads link, and you'll see software that's available for download from the Oracle website. What we want to do is specifically take a look at the software that relates to developers. So we scroll down here and we find developer downloads, and specifically we can click on database. In the database category, you'll find many options available. What we're interested in is not the Oracle 18c Enterprise or Standard Edition, because this is a fairly large piece of software. And it might be a little awkward to play around with that and get that up and running. But conveniently, Oracle Corporation has made a scaled-down version of 18c available to us in the form of 18c Express Edition, also simply referred to as XE. So we'll click on this, and it brings up the dialog that allows us then to obtain that software. The version of the software available for download is 18.4. The first thing you'll need to do is click on the Accept License Agreement, and when you do that, you're then able to download the software. But there's one more additional step that might be required. If you select the version that we're going to examine, the version for Windows, the 64-bit version, click on Download. Here's the additional step. If you've not already signed in with an Oracle account, you'll need to do so at this time in order to proceed with the download. Getting an Oracle account is pretty easy. If you don't have one, you can simply click on the Create Account button and go through a little dialogue and provide some information. Having an account with Oracle is actually well worth it. What you'll see is if you go back to the download page, we clicked on Database and we saw a wealth of different database software options available. In addition, there are other software that Oracle makes available for download, but you'll need the account with them in order to proceed with the download. In another video that I have, I show you how to obtain a copy of Oracle SQL Developer, a very nice front-end tool that can be connected to an Oracle database. And in order to obtain that, you'll take advantage of having an Oracle account. So assuming you have the Oracle account, you'll then be able to proceed with the download. Once the download is completed, you'll have a rather large file. In the case of Windows, it's about 2 gigabytes. In the case of Linux, it's a little over 2 gigabytes. So the file that you download for Windows 18c Express Edition is a compressed file, a .zip file. So you'll need to expand that. Once you expand it, which is fairly easily done in Windows, right-click and click the Extract All option, and you'll then be able to extract the content of the file. Once you expand it, you'll have available the actual installation software. Let me show you where I have that. When I open up this folder, you'll see all of the details for the files that have been downloaded and then extracted. Now, I'm going to install this on another machine. I actually have a virtual machine set up that's running Microsoft Windows version 7, 64-bit, and I'm going to install this software on that machine. So I'll switch over to that machine now. On this machine, I've copied the file that I just showed you. So what we have available to us is the extracted version of the download file. The next thing I'll need to do is to run the setup file. As I run the setup file, this will then proceed with the process of extracting the files and configuring the environment. What I'll do is, as I go through this step, some of it may take several minutes, so what I'll do is I'll pause the video and then come back and show you the completed process. But let's go to Setup EXE and begin the installation. So I'll double-click on this, and it tells me that it's checking the prerequisites and doing the install of these. By the way, if you were installing with Linux, you'd actually have to download a couple of additional files to set up the environment. I don't have a video to demonstrate the installation of Linux, but if you're familiar with Linux, those additional steps wouldn't require too much effort on your part. Okay, as it's preparing for the install, we get this little message here, shows you that it is checking for prerequisites and installing whatever elements are necessary to configure the environment. Okay, now the dialog we want to pay a little bit more attention to. We're going to click Next and accept the license. Click Next once again and select the destination folder. The default is adequate for what I'm doing, but if you would like to place the software in a different location, you have the opportunity to click the Change button and designate that other location. Click Next, and here's a very important step. Previously, when we installed Oracle 11G Express Edition, we were requested to provide a password for sys and system. That's what we're doing here as well. But notice also that the prompt is asking us for an additional piece of information, the password for PDBAMIN. This is the database administrator for the pluggable database. This is part of the architectural change within Oracle 12c and 18c and 19c. So it's very important that you note the values that you provide here. I'm simply going to provide the word Oracle, and I'm going to type this in all in uppercase. Oracle is case sensitive with respect to passwords, but the purpose of my installation here is simply to set up something for training and education purposes. So I'm really not concerned with security. But you would want to, under normal circumstances, have a pretty secure password. And you want to write this down, whatever you choose, because it is a case-sensitive password, and if you lose this, you're going to have some difficulty, because sys effectively owns the database, and that's the account that starts and stops the database instance. System is a system-wide database administrator for the pluggable database, but also for what we call the CDB. PDB and CDB are two parts of the architectural change. PDB admin will be the administrator for the pluggable database. We'll explain all of that a little bit later in another video as we discuss the architecture of 12c, the multi-tenant architecture. But having set up the database passwords, we can now click Next and proceed. And this is also something where you'll want to jot this information down. This might be useful in the future, telling you where the software will be installed, what is referred to as the Oracle Home, and also the Oracle Base. These two locations are important for various operations that you might perform with the Oracle database. So you want to at least do a screen print or jot this information down for future reference. Okay, I click Install, and the installation process begins. So this will take some time, so I'm going to pause the video and return when this is complete. Provided no problems were encountered, you'll eventually get this display that says the installation was successful. And you'll want to note closely the information that is actually presented here. It tells you things like the multi-tenant container database. On my machine, it was simply called localhost, but the port is 1521. In addition, there's a pluggable database. So the container database is the CDB, the pluggable database is the PDB. The PDB is also on the same machine, same port, but it has a name of XEPDB1. The reason I'm going through this information is we have to follow an additional step to be able to connect our client to the server. And this information is what we're going to need in order to establish that connection. So make sure you capture this information, print it from the screen or write it down, but make sure you get this down correctly, because you're going to need this for the next step where we're going to have the client and the server actually communicate. If you're using the SQL developer software, this is going to be critical information. And even if you're not using that, if you're just using SQL+, this is also very important information to be able to get the host and the client to be able to communicate. Okay, so don't lose this information. Okay, we click Finish, and it's done. But we don't see anything happening. What happens is, behind the scenes, the database was actually installed and configured, and there should be, within the background of the Windows system, a couple of processes that are running that relate to the Oracle database and the listener software. If we scroll through the processes where I've used Task Manager to open this up, you'll see Oracle EXE, and you'll see it's fairly substantial. That's the Oracle database engine itself. If we scroll further down, you'll see something in here called TNSListener. This is the TNSListener. This is the listener software that's used to establish a connection between a client application and the database server. This is a critical component to establish the communication between the client and the server, and this is where we're going to utilize some of that information that appeared on the previous display. Okay, so how do we proceed? We want to be able to get the software connected from the client and the server, so we go to the Start menu. We can go under All Programs, and there's a new folder here called Oracle, or DB18 Home 1. Click on this, and you'll see a bunch of different components. The first thing we have is application development. We open that up, and we see SQL+, and this is our command line tool that will allow us to talk to the database. I'm going to quickly modify this to make it a little larger. Okay, and that should make it a little bit easier to see. Now, if we attempt to log in as system, and I give the password, normally we wouldn't give the password in this manner, but again, this is for training purposes. This is exposing the password to anyone peeking over your shoulder, so obviously that's not very secure. But when I do this, it tells me I'm connected. The question is, what have I connected to? There are two types of databases that we consider when we're working with the Oracle 12c family, which includes Oracle 18c. A CDB, which is a content database, and a PDB, which is a pluggable database. Turns out that what we've connected to here is the CDB. I'm selecting from a view called $database, the name of the database that I'm currently connected with, the status of that database, and whether or not it's a CDB, a content database. I fire it up, and sure enough, it tells me this is a CDB. This is not the database that we're going to be using for our application development. But what we need to do is we need to find what's called a PDB. The PDB can be found by querying another view called $PDBS. And it turns out there should be a couple of these. One would be what they call the seed database, kind of the starter database, and then you'll have one or more actual pluggable databases, which are kind of like the original database that you worked with back in Oracle 11 if you worked in that era. So when I query $PDBS and say, give me the name and the open mode, I find out that there's this thing called PDB seed. That one we're not concerned with. This is the one that's going to have our actual application data, XEPDB1. Problem is, the tool, when we simply say connect as some user to the database, by default, it's going to go to the CDB. How do we get it to go to the PDB? Well, what we need to do is we need to create an entry that the listener can use to establish that connection. So we've got to do one more step. If you go to the Start menu, there's a program under the Oracle Home in the category called Configuration and Migration Tools. The tool we're looking for is called the Net Configuration Assistant. And when we click on this, this is the tool that we'll use to update a file that the listener reads when a client is trying to establish a connection to the database. So we look at this display, and what we're interested in is local net service name configuration. With that option selected, we can click the Next button. What we're going to do is select the Add option, and this will allow us to add an entry into the file that is read by the listener program when we try to establish a connection to the database. So we're going to take the name that we had here, the XEPDB1, and that's going to be the service name. Click Next. We're using TCP for the communication protocol. The host name is simply local host. The port number is 1521. Again, this information was available to us on that final display that said installation was successful, and this is why this information is important to us. We click on Next, and we're going to do a test. So we change from No to Yes, click Next, and now we're going to provide information where system is the user that we would like to use to connect to the PDB, and the password is the same as before, and this is going to be Oracle in my case, because that's what I installed it as. Click OK, and notice it tells me the connection was successful. Now we click Next. We're going to call this XEPDB1. You can make it any name you want, but that's what I'm going to use. Click Next, and then we're all done. So click Next and finally get to Finish. So now if I restart SQL+, and I attempt to connect as user system password of Oracle, and I don't put a host name, what I get is XE. I query this metadata, something called global name, and it tells me the database I'm talking to. But now, if I say, let's do a connect system Oracle at XEPDB1, and then run the same query, it now tells me I've connected to the other database. So I'm no longer connected directly to the CDB, but I am now connected to the PDB. This is what I have to do for the setup in order to get the software downloaded, installed, and get my database prepared so that I can create my own tables, create my own users, create my own table spaces, and do all the fun stuff with the database. So I do have additional videos where we're actually doing this type of thing, and the videos that I've created that apply to the Oracle 11G database, you can now use them against this Oracle 18C database. The only thing you have to be aware of is that you have to have created the PDB information for the listener to establish the connection in the TNSNames.aura file. And once that's in place, you're free to do everything as described in the other videos. I'll follow this video with additional information about how to use 18C or the 12C family in some detail, but this was the basic idea of the video, was to get you started on getting the software installed and the database up and running. So I hope you enjoyed the video and found it informative. I know it's a little confusing because there's a change in the architecture from the way Oracle used to work. But it's important to understand these things if you're going to be working with Oracle database. So if you found the video useful, consider giving us a thumbs up and offer any comments, and also consider subscribing to the channel. And once again, thanks for watching.